remember who it is that he's leaving behind. Denying fishermen, fleeing zealots, doubting Thomases, weak tax collectors. Can this group that Jesus leaves behind, can they really continue his ministry? This is a motley crew. This is not your strongest group of people. Broken, frayed. Can they really build the church? Let me come back to that. I would be remiss if I did not touch our Old Testament reading today. If for no other reason than if you've never heard it before, it probably sounds a little creepy. No? Yes? God leads Ezekiel out into a valley full of dry bones. If I stood before you on a Sunday and said to you, last night God led me out into a graveyard and told me to prophesy to the bones, there may be some medication you'd be looking for me to take. God leads Ezekiel out into a valley of dry bones. And God says to Ezekiel, mortal, can these dry bones live? And I could be wrong, but I think Ezekiel's answer, oh Lord, you know, is him really trying to evade the question. Can these dry bones live? Because if it were me standing there, I'd be a little afraid to go either way. And so God says to Ezekiel, prophesy to these dry bones. Prophesy to these dry bones so they might have life. And so Ezekiel does. And so as he prophesies to them, he sees that sinews and skin and flesh come upon these dry bones. But there's still something missing from the dry bones, and that is the breath of life. And so God says to Ezekiel, prophesy to the breath. And so God's breath enters into them. And it is when the breath comes that they come to have life. And we could make a mistake in interpreting this reading. And that mistake would be to say that those dry bones that took on sinews and flesh and skin and now breath come to have the life that they once lived. That they retain an old life, a life that they had before. But no, when the breath of God enters into us, when the breath of God enters into dry bones, it is a new life that comes to be. And so as Ezekiel prophesies to these bones and God gives them the breath of life, new life is seen. And I think we can find a similarity in our reading from Acts. Because those disciples, those misfits from Galilee, that motley crew, well-intentioned, yes, they do go back to Jerusalem. But they aren't out preaching and proclaiming and yelling, Alleluia, Christ is risen. They're huddled in an upper room again. Probably afraid, probably not sure what's going to happen next. I can picture John kneeling in prayer and Thomas kind of wringing his hands, not sure if it's really going to happen. Peter telling everyone, it's happening, it's going to happen, it's going to happen. But then, there's a rush of violent wind. And descends tongues of fire. And upon the dry bones of the first gathering of the church comes the Spirit of God.